In this episode of Idea City,
most people want to die at home, I've learned. That doesn't surprise me because when I first started practice in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, people died at home. We had nothing more we could do to keep them living because we didn't have the technology that miraculously has saved lives.
Idea City, the smartest people, the biggest ideas.
In my new life as the head of Carp, I don't know if you know, but I am the president of Carp, the Canadian Association of Refired, Revitalized, Reinvented Persons, another way of saying people of a certain age. And as the head of Zoomer Media, I'm working very hard to deliver a positive image of aging. And my view is that generally speaking, when issues of aging are discussed, they're viewed with alarm. They're seen as either existing problems or serious problems in the making. And I want to posit, our organization wants to posit also an alternative view. It's not just a problem to be managed, it's an opportunity, it's a blessing to be celebrated. And part of the reasoning for that is that if every time people see you coming, you make them think of a never-ending visit to the dentist, sooner or later they want to stop seeing you coming. So in that context, it is also necessary for me to admit that there is an unavoidable corollary to a discussion about longer life and, generally speaking, better life, in contradiction with the question of who decides how and when to end it. I know my own mind is very clear about this question. I know that it is highly controversial among our membership and in society still. We presumably all of us fear death, maybe most of us, just about all of us fear death. But perhaps we wouldn't if we weren't concerned about the possibility of unbearable pain and the loss of dignity that comes with a loss of control. And the question some people ask is, why would a humane society in that circumstance deny an individual a reliable, even a pleasant and possibly even a ritualized exit? So considering the legal risks that people who want to pursue the discussion face, and considering the unavoidable emotional risks, I consider those who keep this discussion going in the face of threats and insults as remarkable saintly figures who give a great deal of themselves to alleviate human suffering. I think they're unique people in their motivation and in their emotional strength, and one such person is Richard MacDonald. Richard.
Thank you, Moses. I do have to note, Moses, that in the fine book that you've presented to everybody, you may notice that the facing of it says danger, to go with the X for the 10th anniversary. So I'm a very dangerous person to quite a few people, especially the leaders of religion, certain religions, the leaders of organized medicine. Now, organized medicine, that's an oxymoron, if I ever heard it. But the leaders of medicine think they're speaking for most physicians. They are not. Most physicians with whom I have talked, whether they have a religious approach to dying or not, they are mostly wanting to do the best thing for their patient. Most people want to die at home, I've learned. That doesn't surprise me, because when I first started practice in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, people died at home. We had nothing more we could do to keep them living, because we didn't have the technology that miraculously has saved lives once it was developed in the 70s. But the first 20 years of practicing, our patients died at home, by and large, unless they had a catastrophic thing that took them to hospital, which they then died quickly. But if they had a long-term illness, cancer or other degenerative disease, they died at home. And we, of course, made sure they were very comfortable at home, and we hastened their death. No matter what leaders of medicine say, we hasten dying of our patients. And we were never criticized for it. It was ethical and appropriate to provide medication to our patients to hasten their death. And so we did. Now, I really appreciate the fact, too, that many people not only wish to die at the location of their choosing, so that they can be surrounded by loved ones, but they also wish to die in a manner that is least painful, least uncomfortable, and as speedy as possible.
When we come back,
I get choked up a bit. I think of the honor of being asked to be trusted to be with people when they're dying.
get the latest Idealist news, presenter information, and watch streaming video at www.ideacityonline.com. Idea City, the smartest people, the biggest ideas.
The good news is that that is possible in 2 states now in the United States to have assisted dying. They call it assisted suicide, or at least the opposition calls it suicide. We'd prefer that terminology is appropriately used. People who are eligible for assisted dying in Oregon and in Washington State now, as of the last 2 months, are terminal. They must be terminal in order to enter that qualification that is placed on them. They must qualify to be terminal, which means they must be within 6 months of dying, and some 2 physicians must state that they agree they are. So that there is the good news that a second state has followed suit, because interestingly, it's just 10 years since the first state, Oregon, started its program of assisted dying. So in 10 years, the progress, if you want to call it that, is 1 more state. In Canada, no such luck. You must die as you are told to die, the same as the rest of the states and the rest of many, many places in the world. And yet I'll tell you that right now, as I'm speaking, there are people dying in every country in the world, including Canada, with the assistance of their physician. Trust me, I'm a doctor. The reason we need right to die societies is that it isn't talked about. So I'd like to have 2 things that you'd remember to take home with you, and I hope you will act, at least on this first point I want you to have. Talk about dying. That sounds pretty dismal, I know. But do you realize how important it is that you talk with your loved ones? They must know what you wish if you are near the end of life. Now, I plead that this not just be for those of us with very gray or white hair. Young people should be talking about what their wishes are. The major changes in law, medical law, ethics in the States and in Canada have come about because of cases of young people being in a comatose state. As they say, brain dead. And I will tell you, there are tens of thousands of people around North America on ventilators, not ever going to wake up. They are brain dead, but they're being kept alive. And this is where our technology that I talked about being so wonderful in saving lives, if you have an acute trauma or an acute illness, such as a heart attack, that momentarily robs you of oxygen to the brain. There are tens of thousands of people where that technology is used inappropriately, and it is not extending life, it's extending dying, and that's wrong. This young woman, late 30s, progressive loss of total body function, living in a wheelchair. She made up her mind that that isn't what life was about for her, as she was fast losing all mobility. She asked volunteers from our organization to visit. We did, and she was given the information, because what we do, we think is totally legal. We give information to people on how they may hasten their own death. We do not provide the means. We do not physically assist them. But we give information, advice, and if they wish, we're present with them when they die. And that's actually it's a privilege. I get choked up a bit. I think of the honor of being asked to be trusted to be with people when they're dying, because they know we have some experience in that area. And this young woman asked us to be present. So we had gone through the details of how she would accomplish her own death. And she was elated. She said she had felt so at peace since we had said we would come and speak with her and give her this information. She said she'd had the best weeks since she first learned that we were going to give her the information and be with her. So she had bought a bottle of great single malt. Well, I am never one to turn down a drink of single malt. And she had lost most of her money because of her illness. As you know, illness is very expensive, even in Canada, but much more so in the States. This young woman, that wasn't the reason she was dying, but it had certainly modified her lifestyle. So she had bought herself a nice bottle of single malt and was so pleased to hear that I enjoyed it too. So we had a drink or two, and then she said, "I'm ready." She had acquired, with information that we had provided, she had acquired medication, which is barbiturate, a strong sleeping pill that's rarely prescribed or available now in the States or Canada. But she had acquired some. And so she had the powder from the capsules, was mixed as we'd instructed into applesauce. And we had warned her and her loving brother and sister-in-law, who were with her at the time, along with me and another volunteer. We'd warned her how terrible this stuff was. So anyway, she tasted the first, and I said, "You should taste it first." So she tasted, and she said, "Oh my God, that tastes like shit." And then she broke up and she said, "You know, I'm going to get this all down even if it kills me."
when we come back.
The sting operation consisted of an agent who pretended to have cancer of the pancreas, a quickly deadly disease.
Get the latest Idea City news instantly. Follow us on Twitter. Idea City, the smartest people, the biggest ideas.
Now, I've got to tell you the problems we're having in providing this information now, and what's very important to our organization, Final Exit Network, and I'd ask you to look that up, Google it, and you'll find it, just say Final Exit or assisted suicide, whatever. But Final Exit Network, since February, we have had 7 of our people arrested and 3 charged, 4 of them charged in Georgia after a sting operation. The sting operation consisted of an agent who pretended to have cancer of the pancreas, a quickly deadly disease. And he joined us a year ago as a member and then asked for information after a few months. The sting operation consisted of him sending in his request for our presence and a medical history written by a doctor from the state of Georgia, employed by the state, who pretended this man had terminal cancer and would die within 3 months. When our volunteers, all senior citizens, by the way, many like me in their 80s, but when they arrived, 10 agents of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation swooped in, heavily armed, by the way, and because we are very dangerous, and with flak jackets on so that we couldn't possibly inject them, I guess, or something. I don't know. At any rate, I know that these people were arrested and charged with attempting or offering to assist suicide. Just a month ago, 4 more of our people were arrested in a case in Arizona. And that prosecutor has decided to charge us, my friends, with manslaughter. Not only that, in his release to the press, he said that he was so proud of his officers and his office that they were going to not let this homicide go unpunished. So, again, how long we're going to be able to continue our activities in providing information and support, we don't know. I will tell you that the vast majority of us are continuing to continue. And we will do so. And we may end up, along with our friends, charged with something. But we feel this is a very important civil and human right that should not be taken away from us. Thank you.
What about the Canadian operation? Do you have chapters? Do you have Canadian presence?
We do, yes. Mm-hmm.
I was asking Richard about the Canadian presence for the Final
We have
Exit
a board
Network.
member from Toronto, actually.
Indeed.
On the Final Exit Network.
And he is?
Should I say her name here? Anyway, Ruth. Ruth is, she's involved with Right to Die Canada.
Right.
But she is a very active board member of
Easy to find?
Of Final Exit Network.
Is she easy to find?
Look through Final Exit Network, you'll see her name, or look up Right to Die Canada, and you'll find Ruth. Okay, and she runs a website as well called Euthanasia. Okay?
Thanks, Richard.
Just so you wonder what, no, we aren't practicing euthanasia. That is absolutely opposite to what we do. The patient must do everything themselves.
Understood. Thank you, Richard.
I find that most people who are near death keep their sense of humor. If they have been optimistic people during life and enjoying life, we've had so many who have helped us as volunteers, being with them. They've helped to relieve the tension by saying such things as, well, I'm sure glad you're here because I want to make sure this goes okay. It's the first time I've done it. You should have the choice to say, no more treatment, no more surgery, no more this, that, and the other that we in medicine often suggest, because often the side effects to the treatments take away the quality of life that you might have had for the remaining months.